All right. Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. That is right. You're hearing a lot of Nick Verlaney over the next week because I've recorded a lot of our episodes while Dan is on a well-deserved break for his 10-year anniversary with his wife. So you're going to get me, but you're also in this episode going to get the one, the only, the Matt Stradamus of it all, Matt Law. Matt, how are we doing?
Yeah, I was just saying off camera, as it were, pretty smug still, actually. Feeling pretty good about those predictions so far. Is it the done thing to drink a beer while I do this, by the way? It's Sunday night when we record, so I'm feeling a
No.
little more relaxed than normal.
In fact, I'm going to get one as well. How about that? 1 second.
Fantastic.
We're doing it.
Let's do it. If anyone spotted the brand of beer I'm having, there are other beers available. I think that legally covers us on the beer front. Excellent. I like this. Should we do a virtual cheers on air?
I think we should. Cheers,
Yeah.
Matt.
Cheers. Here's to Champions League football for Chelsea.
There you go. Premium pills from Omaha, Nebraska. What are you drinking there?
I'm drinking a very simple neck oil. There are other brands of beer available. I don't want to get us into legal trouble with beer.
Absolutely not. Especially because if you were coming to the Club World Cup, you know that Michelob Ultra is sponsoring us to do some partying this summer for the Club World Cup. New York on 6/14 at Legends. Very excited to see everyone there for a big party. We'll be in Atlanta for the first match of the Club World Cup on the 16th, doing a thing after the match. Very excited about that. And then, of course, Philadelphia on 6/19. We're going to be doing a live podcast and throwing a big party at Tir na Nog with our friends, the Philly Blues. So tons of stuff going on this summer, Matt. But we have to start with the end of the season and your prediction. You're 5 for 5. Chelsea beat Everton. Chelsea beat Liverpool. Chelsea lose to Newcastle. Chelsea beat Manchester United. And Chelsea go into the last day of the season at Nottingham Forest and produce a pretty gutsy win, 1-0 over Forest at home. Thoughts on the just incredible prediction run. I mean, just everyone's tweeting along the way, following your progress. You feel good? I mean, what's happening?
I feel good. I always felt confident. I didn't ever feel worried about it, to be honest with you. I maintained through the season that Chelsea were going to qualify for the Champions League. I had a little couple of wobbles on that, but I decided to stick to my guns. But on that final five prediction, I was always very confident. I'd reasoned it all out in my head, and it played like other little bits played out as well. You know, the fact I thought Liverpool would basically be hungover and not care, and I thought Forest would have run out of legs by the end of the season. Look, it's probably my only ever prediction that's gone so well. So there you go. So I'm going to live off it for a while.
We're obviously very pleased that Chelsea finished in fourth on 69 points. You know, I think we had 69 as the target all along. It ends up that 66 would have likely done it because we finished on the same goal diff as Newcastle, but they finished 3 points below us after they lost to Everton on the last day of the season, kind of surprisingly, to be honest. So 66 would have gotten it done. Your Villa come up just short after kind of a weird match at Manchester United.
I predicted that too. I predicted that.
I
tried to tell you we are hideous against Manchester United. Everything that can go wrong against United always goes wrong.
You couldn't have predicted just how weird that game got, though, because it was as strange of a final game as you can get.
I was quite pleased I was reporting elsewhere so I could sort of zone out from it a little bit.
Man.
So, yeah, I've zoned out ever since, quite frankly. So, but I mean, look, 69 points. Well, 69 last season would have got fourth place as well. 69 points is a good haul. It's a good, solid top four haul. It's not, no one can accuse Chelsea of getting in on a bad season or getting in through the back door or being fortunate with it. 69 points, I think pretty much every season will get you Champions League football. So that is deserved. They've over the course of a season, they've deserved that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it shakes out in a pretty good way. I think, the way that Villa closed and Forest fell, I think it's deserved that Villa would be Europa League after Forest kind of capitulated at the end. I mean, Villa had that was only their second loss in 10 games at the end
Well,
of the
I
season. I
tweeted
mean,
something towards the last weekend, and I'm slightly going off the top of my head here because I didn't expect to necessarily talk about this, but I think going into the Sunday, Villa had spent a total of 64 days in the top five. I think Chelsea had spent like nearly 200 days in the
mm,
top five, like 170 something or something. I mean, Chelsea after Liverpool and Arsenal, I think Chelsea were the third. Or if they weren't the third, they were very, very, very close to the third. So if you're taking it on a balance for the season, Chelsea definitely deserve to be on that top four. And as much as I don't like to say it as a Villa fan, 64 days, we would have stolen a champ had we have got it with a very good run at the end of the season. But we would have nicked a Champions League place, quite frankly, because over the course of the season, we hadn't actually really done what was required because of the champion. We struggled to combine the Champions League with our league form. Forest are the ones who I think can feel a little bit upset in a way, even though they only have themselves to blame, because they spent an awful lot of time in that top five, and to finish in conference is a kick in the teeth. Like as a Villa fan, I can reason it out in my head. We're in the Europa League. We have a great chance to try and win that next season, maybe another avenue into the Champions League. I think for Forest to end up in the Conference League, given the season they had, is a real kick for them, and that's the one kind of nobody wanted. But look, all credit to Chelsea in that run. They were really strong at the back in that run. 2 clean sheets in the last 2 games. Those 2 victories, they displayed a lot of what we'd raised questions about through the season, about whether they had that mentality, that character, that ability just to win when you had to win, no matter how. And individuals as well. I'll say it on here. I've been very reluctant to lavish Enzo Fernandez with praise over the course of the season because I'd still earlier in the season wanted to see it in either very big games or very key moments. But last 5 games, he came up with some big performances and big moments for the team. And in the Conference League final too, of course. And fair play to him. He's showed something that I wasn't always convinced was there with him. So a lot to be positive and about and praise people about, really. And Maresca as well. I thought Maresca had difficult moments this season that we talked about when he showed his inexperience at times of squad management and things. But you can't knock him for those last 5 games. He came up with it when it mattered, and he made some decisive changes in games as well that really swung games Chelsea's way and helped them see it out.
yeah, I mean, you look at really the big picture here from the 25th of February, where Chelsea beat Southampton 4-0 all the way to the end of the season. Chelsea only lost 2 matches during that time, 1-0 to
Yeah,
Arsenal away in a game that was pretty terrible
yeah,
regardless. And then the Newcastle result, which is obviously
yeah,
tainted by the red card. Only 2 draws in that time. The rest are wins. And so that
yeah,
end of season rush is what propels you to the
yeah.
Champions League.
They sorted their away from out just enough.
Yep.
um, but
Barely.
I mean, I've got to say, if you're looking at a turning point in a season, Fulham away. I
Correct.
mean, Fulham away. I mean, I still think even a draw in that game. I know if you take the 2 points off, you get to 67, they still qualify. But I don't think they get the other results if they draw that game because I just think the mood would be bad. I think there would be a feeling of the fact it wasn't going to happen. I think the Fulham away game um, and though that Tyreek George substitution and Neto's goal, I just think have really turned the tide in their favour. I think, like I say, I mean, a defeat obviously I think would have created a toxic atmosphere and everything would have gone very differently. And I just think a draw, they wouldn't have subsequently have got the other results on the back of a draw. I think the win, if you remember the way they celebrated that win as well,
Yeah.
it just gave them that momentum to do it. And it felt the nature of the way they do it at the time. I remember just feeling like it was a big deal. It just felt like a thing that could define a season, and it did end up that way.
It's
So
definitely
for
the
that,
match of the season for sure.
oh, most important result of the season by
Yeah.
none. Yeah, by
Yes.
a mile.
Correct. I mean, let's contextualize this a little bit further because I think it's important to kind of put into frame what is going to then be the result of the effort that was put in the season. Obviously, Chelsea qualified for Champions League. Obviously, there's a trophy lift at the end of the season for a young team, many of whom who have never lifted a trophy. This was Maresca's first season in charge. He achieved his targets pretty bluntly, did it at the end of the year. And there are photos at the end of the season with all of the ownership group on the field together, hobnobbing, looking like they're having a good time after what had been a pretty rocky road for them this year. I mean, any or all that, feel free to take on, but does this feel like a huge change in direction now for Chelsea to you?
Well, I always think it's important not to get too high and too low. I never think that, for instance, qualifying for the Champions League is going to change the world quite the way. Look, I'll be honest, some of the media, as it goes along, will have you believe, because obviously it creates great excitement to hype it up as much as possible. I never believe it's going to change the world as much as people sometimes get carried away with. And I also never believe that missing out is quite the crisis that can be, perceived. I mean, if you're to believe anything at the moment, Villa won't have any players by the start of next season because we've got to sell every single player we've got. And I do think the ownership, whilst obviously being very pleased with it, and as you said, hobnobbing on the pitch, and they've had their moment. I got the impression all the way through that they were doing quite well at keeping level heads, because I do think there's a realization that at the end of the day, that last day could have gone any other way. It could have gone any way, and we could be sat here talking about Chelsea being in the Europa League or even the Conference League, and sort of talking about this disastrous end to the season. And yet they would argue nothing they did would have been particularly different. That's just the nature of football. One result on one day can make something look brilliant, and equally can make it look like the worst thing ever. So they've been trying to keep a very level head. So I would imagine they will continue to try and do that, and won't start getting carried away with the fact that this is just the start of whatever happens now, everything's going to go great in an upward trajectory. It gives them a great platform. It gives them a great chance, but it comes with no guarantees that the world is going to magically change. But I mean, commercially, it is a very big deal for them. I think actually commercially, almost it is more important in a way than on the pitch, because I think commercially it probably does give them a guarantee that they will be able to pull in better commercial deals this summer, and hopefully a long-term shirt sponsorship on a very good deal. we'll see.
TBD.
We'll see whether. I think it probably offers more guarantees off the pitch. On the pitch, it gives them a great chance, and it gives this group of players, as you said, they've had their moment winning a trophy. I think as well the way they won it, having to actually suffer a bit in the first half, is good for them. I wouldn't have seen it as being necessarily that big a deal had they have just won that game 4-1 by going sort of 3-0 up in the first half and it never really being a contest. The fact they've been in a major final with their backs against the wall, having played a terrible first half, needing to respond, I actually think that's better for what's coming. So look, it gives them a great chance. My slight caveat, and we'll probably talk about this in more detail later in the show as we come on to all the various bits of it, is that they're probably about to embark on the hardest sort of 12 months you could possibly ask for now. Because from now until the end of next season, they pretty much don't stop, and they're in all the hardest competitions. So there's not really any opportunity to sort of play B teams anywhere. So while it's a great opportunity and it should be something fans feel very optimistic about, it does only get harder from here. It does.
Yeah, I totally agree with that analysis. I think with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like you need to get prepared for what's coming up, because in the last 5-10 years, football has just continued to add matches and add matches and add matches to plates of footballers who are only human, right? And
well, look. So let's just take the England contingent, because I know their movements very well from covering England. So Cole and the rest of Chelsea's England players, Reece James, Levi, they literally played the final on Wednesday night. Today, they met up with England and flew straight to Barcelona for a training camp. Tuchel's already made it clear he hasn't got time to do deals with clubs on resting players, and I'm sympathetic with that with him. He doesn't have enough time with the players before the World Cup next season. So they are going to basically play. England's second of the two matches is next Tuesday night. So they've basically got a week to 9 days with England with 2 games in that. Then they've literally got a few days before they have to go off to the Club World Cup. They play the Club World Cup. Then they will have to have a statutory 3 weeks rest because that's the FIFA rules, which means they can only really have about a 2.5 week to 3 week pre-season when you'd normally have a 6 week pre-season. Then you go bang into Premier League, and after a month of the Premier League, you go bang into Champions League. And the Champions League's more games than ever, as you know. You know, it's guaranteed 8 league games. You could have another 2 games on top of that. I mean, it is just a phenomenal schedule now that Chelsea and Man City have got because of the Club World Cup and being in the Champions League. And it will be really interesting to see how they both do with that, because I think that will shape in future how clubs approach the Club World Cup. You know, if it's just impossible for City and Chelsea to manage it, I think clubs in future will sack off the Club World Cup. If they can somehow manage it, then obviously it will help that competition greatly. But yeah, the schedule is utterly mad. And unlike last year where they could play a B team in the Conference League, I don't see any Champions League game where they'll be able to play anything but a first team. So it'll be really interesting how they cope with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just to kind of close out here, I know you talked about Enzo Fernandez a few moments ago. Reece James has a huge end of the season. Very happy
massive,
for him and what he was able to contribute.
And leadership qualities. We've
Yes.
seen bits of the leadership qualities, but massive leadership qualities in some of those last few games. Massive. Probably, again, a side to him that I was doubtful about and wasn't necessarily sure he had in his locker. And he's massively shown it, like really, really. And Levi as well, showing big leadership qualities as well.
And I was going to say Levi, who I think closes the season looking like the guy who we think he's going to be for the majority of the rest of his career. Big goal, obviously, at Forest, but some of the tackles and the defensive performances that he put in the last 5 in particular were tremendous. He really...
Think about when we got the news that Fofana wasn't going to play again this season. You did think that defence is going to struggle. And Levi's performances just went up a level for me at that point, and he really took on the responsibility.
Yeah, and the defense got a lot better at the end of the season than they were previously.
Yeah, massively.
Caicedo, we all know about, and just what a rock that he was the entire season. And Cole Palmer showing a little bit of who Cole Palmer is at the end. Like all these players, these 5 players in particular that I'm calling out here, I think you could add Cucurella.
Got to add Cucurella for me. Got to add Cucurella. He's in my top 3 of the season for Chelsea. Cucurella.
Agreed.
I mean, phenomenal. And also, I mean, again, another guy who has displayed massive leadership quality and massive character. I think he's been sensational this season. I'm trying to think. Am I forgetting someone? I think there's a strong argument that Cucurella has been the best left back in the league this season, to be honest with you.
He wasn't in any of the awards. It was always Kirkes from Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kirkes has had a phenomenal season, but if you're offering me Kirkes or Cucurella if I'm going into a Champions League semi-final or final tomorrow, I'm having Cucurella all day long.
Yeah.
You know, Cucurella's been phenomenal. I don't think there can have been a better left back than him this season in the league.
Totally agree. I think he's definitely in my top 3 of the season. I think he's probably 2. I think he's right.
Yeah, I was having this 2. Yeah, agreed.
But all these players, I think some of the experience, some of the youth mixing together, creating a good atmosphere. I think what I took away from the end of season celebrations and the Conference League celebrations is that this team did what they set out to do. I think there's some relief that comes with that. I think
Oh,
there's
for
probably
sure.
a ton of joy that comes with that. They looked like a team at the end instead of a collection of individuals at whatever price point they came in at. So I don't know. I feel it's easy to feel good after an end of the season that went your way, but I do feel like for a young team, like this could be a galvanizing moment for
Well,
them.
they're the youngest ever team in terms of average age of the Premier League history. They're the youngest ever team to finish in the top four and qualify for the youngest ever English team. I know PSG are the youngest, but I mean, it does bode well. I mean, undeniably, it bodes well. There's still, a lot you have to do right and a lot that can go wrong. We know what football's like, but you can't deny that it doesn't bode well when you look at the ages of some players and what they're already achieving and what that should hopefully mean 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
Yeah, and a lot of momentum heading into what could be a summer transfer window for the ages here. So, any final thoughts on the season that was, Matt? An up and
I
down
just,
affair,
I
but
just as well.
ends well.
I just want to kind of also say, fair play to Enzo Maresca. I've
Yep,
criticised
yep,
him, and he's deserved some criticism. Let's not pretend
absolutely.
he hasn't deserved any criticism and pretend he's done everything right. But for a first season managing in the Premier League, for a first ever season managing in Europe, I mean, I wouldn't know this, and I wouldn't know how to find it out particularly. Has a manager who managing in Europe for the first ever time ever won that European competition? I'd be surprised. That's his first time he's ever managed in Europe. He's managed for the first time in Premier League. He's combined them both. He's done it. He's got them over the line.
Yep,
He's done well. He's done a good job. And again, a bit like we're saying with the younger players, you can only believe that he is going to get better from that experience. Now, the job becomes harder because Champions League's a whole different kettle of fish, but you can only think that he is going to become a better coach for this season, and that bodes well too.
absolutely. I think it's a good end to the year all around. So we're going to take our first ad break here and dive back into what everyone is clamoring for, which is silly season is back. And even in a short 10-day window, here we are. So thanks to the sponsors for supporting the show, and we'll be right back. All right, Matt, silly season's back. Just for everyone's edification here, we're going to do some rules of engagement before we dive into the official kind of players and such. Chelsea are in a special transfer window for Club World Cup participants from now until June 10th. The official transfer window opens on June 15th for
I think the
everybody
transfer
else.
window is for everybody. This little one,
Is it?
yeah, I think it's only opened because of the Club World Cup, but I think everyone can trade. Man United have just bought Kuna today. I think I was look. I might be wrong. I was under the impression everybody can trade in this mini transfer window, but it's been set up primarily for those Club World Cup clubs, but it's not exclusively for them. But you're right. Today is the first day of the first transfer window, which shuts in 9 or 10 days and then reopens again about 6 days later. Why didn't they just leave it open? This is what I don't
I
get.
don't.
Just open it June the 1st and leave it open. Why does it have to shut for 6 days? And
Yeah,
like
I
no
don't
one,
know.
and like everybody, I love the idea that everybody when it shuts on the 10th or whatever it is, closes their laptop for 6 days, switches their phone off. It says, "Oh no, guys, we're not going to do anything because it's not the transfer window at the moment." I mean, give me a break. Everything just carries on as normal anyway. You know,
Yeah,
it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's farcical. Just open it June the 1st
yeah. Well,
and close it September the 1st. Who cares?
and also, there's nothing against if you're a team that wants to sign a player before a transfer window. In any case, you can always come
This
to
is
a
it.
pre-contract
This
agreement.
this is like I
So,
say, the idea we all shut our laptops and switch the
yeah,
phones off and
yeah,
no one's doing anything because it's not the transfer window, guys. I mean, give me a break.
yeah. Regardless, Chelsea are in the Premier League, which means that Premier League clubs are permitted to register a squad of up to 25 players. We know that Chelsea had way more than 25 players last year, but could only register
Yeah,
25. Each squad must contain no more than 17 of those players who are not homegrown. Chelsea have no issue
yeah, they're
there
fine with
with
this.
with the way that we've gone there. and there are tons of rules around transfers, how deals are done, et cetera, et cetera. But the real thing that we need to talk about, because it applies to Chelsea and the finances that we've covered over the last couple of years, are PSR, which is profit and sustainability rules, and the Premier League. There were rumors that they were going to try and amend this ahead of the 25-26 season, but it appears, Matt, as if these rules are in place. And just for everyone's edification again, clubs cannot incur losses greater than 105 million pounds in American dollars. It's 137 million dollars over a 3-year period. So you cannot incur 105 million of losses over a 3-year period. Chelsea have maintained that they are in good standing for PSR. Obviously, the increase in revenue coming in should do nothing but assist that. But what are your thoughts on the PSR stuff as we head into transfer season?
Yeah, so I mean, as you say, you've laid it out very well. I mean, look, I think sometimes some people just get slightly lost in the fact that obviously qualifying for the Champions League doesn't change anything for this latest set of accounts. So it will be the next set of accounts that the Champions League money helps for. So when we're talking about Chelsea being in either a good position or bad position in PSR for where we are now, being in the Champions League doesn't help them for this period. However, Chelsea maintain that they can meet PSR and don't have an issue with it. Obviously, they've got some massive income coming in from the Club World Cup, which will come in after June 30th, but still should, help balance things out a little bit. And they have sold. They are good sellers. They are good sellers. As well as they spend an awful lot in the transfer window, but they do sell well. And sell for a lot of money, and there will be more sales because that is their model, if you like. They like to trade. This ownership like to trade, so there will be more sales. So look, there won't be a problem PSR wise. I mean, very few clubs now can go and spend sort of 200 million on a player or something like that. Liverpool didn't really spend anything last summer, so they're in a very good position. Hence why they can go after Verts and probably look like they're going to break the transfer record, the British transfer record for Verts. But clubs who have spent kind of normally, as it were, through each transfer window, not many of them can go out and spend 100 million. But Chelsea have a healthy enough transfer kitty, as we like to say in the industry. And they will. We know they will use it because they do like a transfer.
There's no doubt about it. Additionally, because Chelsea are in the UEFA Champions League again, which is lovely to say out loud, there is a different system of financial accounting in the Champions League, that is FFP. That is essentially a squad cost ratio rule, which says that there's like a 70% limit to how much you can spend, which means that wages, transfer fees, agent fees, can only add up to 70% of the total revenue.
Yeah, so this is harder for Chelsea.
Yes.
Because we know that Chelsea's revenues are a lot less than their sort of rivals, as it were, what they would call their traditional rivals. Their revenues are a lot less than the Liverpool, Cities, Uniteds, even though United aren't in any European football, Arsenal, and even Tottenham. Yep. So the 70% of their revenue is the part that's harder for them. Now, they have been working, obviously, we know this ownership have been working hard to try and bring the wage bill down, which would contribute to this. But obviously, getting into the Champions League, most of those those contracts will go up roughly around 20 to 25% with their various bonuses they have for participating in the Champions League. So the wage bill will go up. Now, it's ridiculous that you have two different sets of rules and that you can meet one very comfortably and have a very big issue with the other. I mean, Villa ran into horrible problems on the squad cost ratio last year when they got into the Champions League and ended up having to sell Diaby as well as Douglas Luiz. Douglas Luiz saved them on PSR before the June 30th deadline. But then later on in the window, as a bit of a surprise, they sold Diaby, who they'd only had for 1 year, and that was because they just could not get anywhere close to meeting the squad cost ratio. So you got two lots of rules you're working to. I think they'll probably be all right on both, but the European squad cost ratio is the tougher one for Chelsea to spend freely within, because their revenues have been so much lower over the last few years than a lot of those sort of big clubs in the Champions League, because of Stamford Bridge, because of sponsorship deals being down.
Yep.
Yeah, and just basically if you do it's very easy to do. If you do a quick search on everyone's revenues from their last accounts, you'll find that Chelsea are 100 to 150 million, to even in some cases almost like 200 million down on a lot of their rivals.
Yep. There's no doubt about that. So I think the point of bringing this up is Chelsea have the opportunity this summer to spend. They probably can't spend recklessly given the financial situation. We will see a huge boost of revenue for some PSR later this season, but a lot for next year's accounts.
That's right.
Between the Champions League revenue, Club World Cup, anticipated additional commercial revenue that might come in, and player sales, all that sort of stuff. But for this year, there's going to have to be some really smart decisions that are being made. And so when we think about the targets that are out there for Chelsea, we kind of go through the list here, Matt. That's why someone like Liam Delap coming in at £30 million
That's why everybody wanted Delap.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
super affordable.
He's a good player, but let's be honest, the reason so many clubs were in for him was the fact it was 30 million, and the fact that his wages, you can give him a very healthy wage rise and he's still going to be, very modest in comparison to any other striker you're going to sign in that bracket. So, I mean, the 30 million makes it, in terms of a business deal, it makes it an absolute no-brainer, because you don't get anything really for 25 to 30 million these days. I don't know how the clause works. I don't know whether it's one payment or whether if it's staggered payments, even better. It might even be staggered payments from what I can recall off the top of my head. So, yeah, that's why everybody were in for him, and Chelsea will be delighted on that one, because it's a really cost-effective transfer for them that probably helps open doors in other positions and in other places, and even the possibility of signing two strikers rather than just one.
And we will have later this week a detailed Liam Delap scouting special with CFC Central, so plenty more on that front. But it appears as if that's done. I think the medical is either today as we speak.
It's all agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's just a case of which day it gets announced or whatever. But yeah, that's all done. And it's a good start for them. It's a good start. I mean, look, again, a young player who hasn't played. He's played for Man City, but he hasn't played regular first team football as the number 9 for a big club. He hasn't yet had to play regularly in Europe. I don't know whether he ever got on in any European competition for City. I think the most goals he scored so far would have been last season. In a season is 12. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And there's, it's buying talent, but also more potential, and ceiling, shall we say, is a word that people like to use in football now. But it's financially and business-wise, it's a really smart deal. And look, he will come in the day he's announced as a Chelsea player for 30 million. He will instantly be worth double that, if not more. I mean, obviously, this is fantasy world. It would never happen. If Chelsea literally bought him on Tuesday for 30 million and put him on the transfer list on Wednesday, you could get easily 60 million upwards of him. You're immediately buying something that more than doubles in value the next day, or from the minute he signs on the line, because of that clause. So it's a very, it's a complete no-brainer.
Yeah.
And he knows Maresca, and he knows Joe Shields, and he has those links as well. So again, no-brainer from that point of view.
And even 60 million in today's striker market is a bargain. It seems like, because Chelsea are apparently after a second striker, if you are to believe all of the rumors out there, Matt, between Hugo Ekitike between Victor Yorkeres, between some lingering rumors for Osimhen and some others out there. Are you hearing that Chelsea are trying to sign two, and if so, like which one are they leaning toward?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, I think it's a possibility. I think getting the Delap one done early will take a little bit of pressure off them. But I think, ideally, they'll be very concerned about the fact that it could have all gone horribly wrong with the way the striker department was set up this season, and they will definitely react to that. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they end up signing two, particularly if Mark Guéhi then goes either on loan somewhere or goes somewhere with a buyback or something like that. So Ekitike, they definitely like. I think there's a lot of people in football who are hopeful and thinking that Ekitike might have a similar development path to Isak. They see him as a similar type of striker who could be what Isak was when he sort of joined Newcastle or just a little bit before that. They're talking a lot of money, though, for him. I mean, I saw Ekitike a couple of times against Tottenham in the Europa League this season. Even though he scored in the first game, I wouldn't have said he's a £100 million striker for me. So, and it might be that that's just bluff from Eintracht and that they don't get anywhere near. But I'd be a bit worried about paying 100 million for him. He's talented, no doubt. And the Bundesliga is a tough place to judge on. We've seen that before. For everyone that goes spectacularly well from the Bundesliga, striker-wise, there's 3 or 4 that go spectacularly badly from the Bundesliga. So that is tricky and would have to come into thinking. Sesko, it feels, is moving more towards Arsenal now. That feels that it's going in that direction. Gyökeres, I've always been a bit confused by, because a year or so ago, Chelsea definitely weren't interested in Gyökeres, even though they used to get linked with him a lot. They weren't in for him. They didn't quite think he was ready. Maybe that's changed a little bit now, but I still have slight reservations about paying that much for Gyökeres as well. I've got to be honest with you. And Osimhen, the wages, I just the age and the wages and the cost of that deal, I just don't see it. I've got to be honest. So if they do look, if you're asking me today, they're signing the second striker, who's it going to be? I'd say most likely Ekitike, but not at 100 million.
Obviously this puts the Nico Jackson conundrum in square focus for us right now. I think Maresca mentioned how he let the team down at the end of the season. He obviously had a very poor, second half, just like a lot of players did, frankly. If it were you putting yourselves in the sporting director's perspective, are you more likely to buy an Ekitike, keep Nico Jackson, or do something different?
See, I would like them to keep Nico Jackson, because I still think there's a phenomenal striker there. I would like to see him with another very good striker, whether it be Delap or whether it be two people or whatever, where he doesn't have quite so much responsibility on his shoulders, where he can be rotated a bit. Then we will see, whether his attitude can cope with that, because we're not sure. You can make assumptions, but we don't really know. I mean, I think everyone's assumption is he wouldn't like that, but we don't actually know that. It hasn't happened yet. And B, would that help his development? I don't think. I mean, Maresca did hint at this very late in the season, that him being really the only striker hasn't actually helped his development. I mean, they brought him back from the hamstring injury he suffered as quickly as humanly possible. I think had you had another striker around, he would have been given an extra couple of weeks. I mean, you saw in the Conference League that he seemed to tweak something again in that final. And I just think there's a really, really good striker in there. And I do worry, if they sell Jackson, it could be one where in 2 or 3 years' time, well, oh my God, Nico Jackson, why did they let him go? And I doubt they will be obviously aware of that, because they know his talent better than I do. So
100%.
I would like to see him stay and see him with a season of him not being the only striker at the club, and seeing how that works and whether that aids his progression. And then if you get to the end of next season and we're in the same position with Nico, and maybe he's scored 10 goals and we've not really seen any difference in him, then maybe at that stage you say, right, now we sell. They extended his contract last year. There's no contract issue with him. But I do think there is a chance he is sold. Although, what would they want for Nico Jackson? I mean, you've got to say if they could
70 million
well,
minimum.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
this is where it becomes difficult, because if you're valuing Ekitike, we laugh at 100 million, but if you're valuing Ekitike at 70 million, well, Nico Jackson, in a way, in terms of the league he's played in and what he's already done in the Premier League,
The translation between those two,
and having played in
yeah.
Spain and had a good season in Spain, were he coming from a different club, you would actually value him at more than Ekitike. So it becomes very difficult to unpack that. I'm going to just keep going back to this. I would like to give him one more season with another striker, or at least one more striker at the club, and see how that goes. I think it would be too early to sell now, but it might be that they do, and it might be that he goes in and asks. Who knows what happens? He might see strikers come in the door and knock on the door and go, "Hey guys, I'm up for someone else now."
Yeah, that could be. So we'll come back and talk about the rest of the targets here right after the final ad break. Thanks for the sponsors for supporting the show, and we'll be right back. All right, striker notched off the list here. Winger is a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
I think anyone around Chelsea would tell you that despite having many different winger options, that the production from those areas this year was way too inconsistent to really carry us forward and take the step up next season. There are a lot of things going on here. First of all, Jadon Sancho signing or not signing with Chelsea is still up in the air as of the moment that we're talking. It very well could be solved tomorrow, and this part of the section could be dated, but you never know. You have the Mikhailo Mudryk situation, which has still not been resolved in any sort of legal context from the suspension. And you have Madueke with a slightly better year over year, but nothing to blow the doors off it. You had a Pedro Neto who was thrown into every conceivable situation without a ton of production, although some big moments along the way. Was asked to play striker when Nico was out, et cetera, et cetera. Gave a lot of effort and was healthy for the first time in I think the last 5 years of his career, which is great. It's a huge improvement, but not a whole lot of production from these areas. And then, Jadon Sancho's production was very hit or miss throughout the season. What do you make of the winger situation first, and then we can talk about the targets?
So I think, look, it's come out now. I've been kind of sitting on this for a bit, but the Sancho one's interesting, because I do think if they can negotiate his contract down, they'll probably end up signing him. Because I think they still think that for 25 million, if they can get him on a good contract, we talk about Delap being cheap at 30. I think they think that for a player of his talent, even if they don't envisage him playing every week, I think they think that 25 million is still a very good deal for him. And he showed flashes. I know they are very, very happy. Both Maresca and the club as a whole are very happy with the way Neto, like you say, stayed healthy, but also was prepared to play in different positions. He played left, he played right, he played through the middle. They felt that he gave everything every time. It didn't always work out from on the left particularly, but they've been very impressed with his attitude. They've been very impressed with the way he has worked with them to improve his fitness. And I do think there's a belief there that with a full healthy season behind him, that eventually his numbers will kick in. So I think they stick with Neto. So I personally think it's more likely that they bring in someone with the left side in mind. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen with Mudryk, and we can't speculate on it because of legal issues. So I think it's more likely they look at that left side, and it's going to be about, as you say, numbers. They need someone to guarantee them some numbers off the flanks, because that was lacking, and that could have cost them. And it's just the way football's gone, is that if you look at any of the successful teams across Europe, they a lot of them do have a 20, 30 goal striker, but nearly all of them also have 15, 20 goals coming from the flanks as well. You've got to have that these days. It's become a massive fundamental part of the way to play. And also the way Maresca plays his football leans into that as well.
Yeah.
So they're going to want a numbers guy for the left side. And, there'll be various people linked and various things. I mean, one to keep an eye on might be someone called like Xavi Simons, who might leave. Has he been at Leipzig? I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. I think he's been at Leipzig. He's one that's I know they've had a little look at, and who English clubs are having a look at, and believe he's got a lot of talent. There'll be others. There'll be people now I'm forgetting to mention that I knew about as well, because I'm talking about it sort of sat here on Sunday night. But yeah, they need a numbers guy for those wing positions, and certainly once they've got Delap through the door, that's going to be one of their main priorities. Definitely trying to sort that out. I mean, I've got to say, I know he's not a traditional winger, but I just think Eze would be a sensational signing for them. I absolutely love Eze. And he can play off. I know he's not a winger; he can play number 10, but he can play off that left side, or you can sort of play with 2 10s or whatever. I actually think Eze would guarantee them numbers, and that he would be a really fantastic signing for them. But they need someone who's going to score and assist, particularly being able to do it from the left side.
Yeah, agreed. Some of the other targets that have been mentioned, just for sake of the argument here, Nico Williams from Athletic Club, Rodrigo, of course, kind of feels like the odd man out
Rodriguez,
at
yeah.
Real Madrid, and then Jamie Gittins, also rumored from Borussia Dortmund, former City prospect, of
Yeah.
course, because that's what Chelsea's now becoming.
I mean, if you look at, I'm just checking Xavi Simons' stats for the season, and his stats in the Bundesliga, so got to be careful with it. But he was 25 Bundesliga games, 10 goals, 7 assists. That will be the kind of numbers they're sort of after, albeit in a higher league. The season before that, he was 8 goals, 11 assists. So keep an eye on him maybe. But Rodrigo's definitely being touted around. Arsenal have had a good look at him as well. So yeah, he's certainly one worth watching. But there'll be others. There'll be people we don't know about yet as well.
Yeah, Nico Williams, Rodrigo in particular will be wages will be
The problem everyone has with Nico Williams, I'll tell you, the problem everyone has with Nico Williams is that his release clause doesn't look on the face of it too high at 60 million, but it has to be paid in one shot in one go.
Okay.
It can't be staggered over. It can't be amortized. So if you're buying Nico Williams, you're paying 60 million down straight away, which is very, very rare these days. And that's a massive commitment. And then his wages, because of the way they work the wages with the Basque players at Bilbao to keep them, and some of the tax breaks they get, his wages basically equate to about £300,000 a week. So again, you've got to get super creative on the wages to get him in line with Chelsea and anyone. And as I say, as much as the wages are a problem for a lot of clubs, one of the biggest reasons is no one wants to pay transfer fees one hit. So there is a big hurdle on Nico Williams for any club.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting one. He would be my pick, but
he's
I
like the
definitely
dream one,
understand.
isn't he? Yeah, he's like I think he'd be most clubs' dream wing signing.
Let's talk about center back, because I think they're, like we've talked about before, the club will hopefully not, but most likely try and sell Trev Chalobah again, for reasons that continue to pass understanding. You also have a guy like Batty Shield, who has not been in favor as much, was a Conference League player, was pulled early from that one as well. You have the injury to Fofana that I think we're all pretty concerned about moving forward for all the obvious reasons. Thoughts on the rumors there? Okay, Jared Branthwaite is being rumored. Marker, he's been consistently rumored back. There's a Jarell Hato, from the Eredivisie. Thoughts and feelings if Chelsea go after a center back in this window?
Oh, they for sure will go after a centre back. Yeah, I think more likely one than two. I know it's been written or said somewhere that they might do two. My understanding is that it's probably one, but one, to come in to step straight into the first team. The three players you mentioned, once Houston was off the list, he would have been top choice. But once he's gone, the other three are certainly high on the list. All capable of playing on the deck, which is going to be a big thing for them. But all, certainly in Gahey and Branthwaite's case, both have a physical presence as well. Branthwaite's an interesting one because he is more predominantly a left-sider. Now, Gahey can play either side, and I think Hatto is more of a right-sider, I think. But I've got to be honest with you, I've
He's
probably
a
seen him play.
left-sider.
Is he a left-sider? Sorry.
He's like a left center back, left back sort of hybrid guy. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I was literally about to say I must have seen him play twice in my life and can't really remember him, if I'm honest with you. So that's interesting because I'd have said the left side, unless they think Levi can move over or that one of these guys can play. I think Branthwaite is meant to be two-footed, isn't he? Branthwaite's meant to be ambidextrous and have the ability to play both sides. He's just ended up playing on the left for Everton because maybe Tarkowski can't. Look, if I was to pick one of those, I really like Branthwaite. I think he would be good. He's got a presence about him. He's got what looks like could be sort of budding leadership quality about him. He can certainly play on the deck. I mean, Gahey, we all know he'd come in as a guarantee. You'd know what you were going to get with him. You would have no worries about him. The Ajax lad to me looks like a gamble, to be quite honest with you. But I say that partly because I don't really have much knowledge of him. So maybe I'm saying that because I don't know too much about him. But they certainly are going to sign, and will do everything they can to sign a first team defender. And it feels like they want people who can maybe play in a couple of positions, whether it be can play right or left, or can play left side and left back, or can play whatever. It feels like they want someone who can maybe adapt a little bit in there as well. But certainly they'll get one. Disassi clearly they will try and shift. I don't think he will go to Villa.
Totally forgot about him, to be honest. Like that was so likely they will sell Trev and Disassi. So that's two out the door, probably.
Two out the door, probably. I mean, you've got the lad coming in from Strasbourg, remember, which may allow, if they got a good bid for Badiashile, may allow them to sell Badiashile. Like you say, he doesn't seem to be someone who's enamored Maresca too much. He's stuck very rigidly to just being in that Europa Conference League B team, and as you say, he was dragged pretty quickly when they needed to try and up the tempo. By the way, Tossen's been a really good free transfer for them. He's been a really valuable transfer for them. Super solid, reliable. You know what you're going to get with him. Has come in for some difficult matches and performed. You would definitely keep him around the place. But yeah, one more because they'll want basically Colwill, one more, and Fofana when he's fit to be the main three rotation, and then you'd have a fourth who's there for sort of emergencies or the Carabao Cup and stuff, basically.
Another area that I'm looking at, and I don't know if you've heard anything on, is just look. Mark Cucurella played a lot of football this year and is clearly the number one left back. But has there been any talk of left back depth and signing someone who might be an understudy?
Well, that's the interesting thing about when I talk about adaptability.
Yeah,
adaptability, easy for me to say, because it could be that someone comes in who can fill in there as a left-sider, but it does look like I mean, I don't want to say they got lucky because they haven't got lucky. They deserved everything they got this season. But there were still a couple of positions, Caicedo, Cucurella, obviously Cole. Cole's different because a player of Cole's class and Caicedo to a certain extent, whenever a player of that class is going to get injured, you're never going to be able to bring someone in of the same quality.
Yep.
But had they have had like Cucurella out for a long spell at any stage, I'm not quite sure how they'd have coped with that. Um, it it feels like they need a Gusto-ish type signing in that left back. I know Gusto's had a poor or disappointing season, but they kind of need like a young, sort of cheapish left back to come in to provide some cover, or go completely the other way. But I don't think with this ownership would see that and get a real oldie who can just be a real steady Eddie if he has to play. But I agree that it feels like a gamble to only have Cucurella. And, it's not even, we talk about players now having to be able to play 60 matches in a season, because obviously 60 matches is pretty much the top you're going to get if you have a good European run with Premier League and a tiny bits of cup runs. But, with Club World Cup, you can't have Cucurella playing like 70, 75 matches between now and the end of
No.
next season. So they've either got to have someone who can fill in, who plays a different position, or they've got to get some sort of deputy left back from somewhere.
Yep. That
I
they
don't know
they
who that
should.
is. I haven't heard, you said maybe I've heard something. I haven't heard anything on that, quite
Okay.
frankly.
And then the last one,
You're going to
goalkeeper.
say goalkeeper, aren't you?
Yeah.
Look, what we should say is Robert Sanchez did okay at the end of the season.
Did okay.
He did okay. Like, for all the stick we've given Robert Sanchez, he did okay at the end of the season. He made some big saves. Man United game, he made some crucial saves. He didn't do anything silly in any of those games. So, let's give him a
Notably,
little bit of credit.
we did change it up a little bit and
Yeah,
started playing longer, and I think that was part of Maresca's like evolution and just
yeah,
trying to get these results over the line, which is don't make any dumb mistakes, don't put yourself
yeah,
in a bad position,
yeah,
and that was smart. Like I give him
yeah,
credit for acknowledging that and solving it.
yeah, for sure. And it's something that, a few months earlier, he was saying that he would drop players if they kicked it long and stuff. So he he decided against that in the end. But look, first of all, a little bit of credit for Robert Sanchez, because he came
Yep.
through the end of the season well, and I didn't always believe that would be the case. Uh, I think if you're going into a campaign where you're trying to finish, it'll probably be top five again. Let's face it, with so many clubs in Europe, you're trying to finish top five and you're trying to have a Champions League run. Incredibly difficult these days to marry those two things together unless you've got a super good squad. And I think in that situation, not having a top goalkeeper could be very, very expensive. I would still like to see them do a goalkeeper. I still, I'll stick to what I've been told, which is what I wrote, that they will have this review of the goalkeepers and decide which of the two sort of, I say loanees. Penders was kind of loan back, but Penders coming in, obviously Petrovic, whether any of those two get into the first two goalkeepers, and then whether they actually bring in a goalkeeper or believe that one of the first two goalkeepers can. My belief is that you will probably find that Jorgensen will go out on loan, that either Petrovic or Penders will be the number two goalkeeper, and Sanchez will either be sold or be number one goalkeeper. Sanchez isn't going anywhere on loan or anything. So it all really boils down to Sanchez. I would still like them to go out and sign a goalkeeper personally, and that sounds very harsh on Sanchez, given I've just said he did well at the end of the season. But I just think you've got to, if you're going to progress again, you've got to have a top goalkeeper. And there are goalkeepers out there. There are some good goalkeepers out there who they could go for.
Any one in particular that you would have an inclination on?
Well, look, it's hard to have an inclination because they keep. My theory is based around the fact that I think they will come to some point in late July, August, and decide actually let's see what's available goalkeeper wise. It's hard to have an inclination when they seem to be trying to not sign a goalkeeper. But look, I like the guy. I've seen a little bit of the guy Chevalier. Is it at I want to say Lille or Lyon? It's Lille or Lyon, the French goalkeeper who looks a very good prospect. He would come with a risk. I mean, look, Emi Martinez is there for someone. I don't see Chelsea doing it. He's 32 years old. He's Villa's highest earner, £150,000 a week, but it's clear he's available. I think he has maybe peaked. I don't think he's had a brilliant season.
I agree.
But he is there. Mike Maignan hasn't had a brilliant season at AC Milan, but there seems to be some doubt around his future now. We know he is a goalkeeper that Chelsea have looked at in the past. Mm-hmm. I think there might be a contract issue with Maignan as well at AC Milan. I have got no intel whatsoever, but I would maybe keep a little eye on that situation, even though he's older than the Chelsea model, if they do decide to bring one in. And then the other guy who's very highly rated seems to be going to Barcelona now, Joan Garcia. But there are goalkeepers out there, and there is. It feels like there's business to be done in the goalkeeper area. Trafford looks like he's going to Newcastle, but I know a lot of people rate him very, very highly. But again, I think he's a bit of a punt still. I'd like to see them just get a goalkeeper who's an absolute guarantee.
Yeah, there's Diogo Costa, Ogo, not Ego.
Yes.
At Porto. There's a little rumor around Marcin Bolka, who was the Chelsea player way back in the day, who's now at Nice, I believe, who had a great season last season. He's a monster. I think he's like all of 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah, he's apparently had a very good season. He's getting linked with a lot of Premier League clubs, actually.
So they're there. They're there to be done.
They're there to be done, and I do fear if they don't, it could be something that sort of slaps them in the back of the face a little bit and comes back to haunt them. Albeit, I think there was a development in Sanchez. I think there was improvement in Sanchez. I just don't think there was enough that you could trust him through a Premier League and Champions League campaign because the target for next season has to be. I know people say Chelsea have got to win things, but the main target for next season has to be to back up this season by getting in the Champions League again and having a good run in the Champions League for revenue's sake. If you do that, it's a good season. But doing those things together with a young squad is going to be tough. I mean, we've seen how it's impacted clubs trying to marry the new European format with so many games. And when you look at the pots, I mean, I was looking at this last night. Finishing in that top 8 to avoid 2 extra games is going to be damn difficult. I know PSG didn't finish in the top 8, and finishing in the top 8 is not the be-all and end-all. And it might not be the clubs we expect to finish in the top 8 who necessarily get there, but it'd be damn difficult to finish in the top 8. There's a good 15 clubs who you could make a case for should definitely be in the top 8.
Well, and you watch what PSG did yesterday, which was an absolute demolition job on Inter Milan in the final. A young team, that has been brought together by an excellent manager in Luis Enrique. They just look like world beaters for years.
They look phenomenal. You've got to think that Real Madrid are going to be good with Xabi Alonso coming in. Yeah. I mean, they've had a bad season, but when you look at their squad, it's a phenomenal squad. Barcelona, all of a sudden, with this young squad, all of a sudden look like a squad who are going to go places for the next few years. I mean, it's going to be tough. And we've discussed at the top of the show, Liverpool won the league and look like they're going to put Wirtz in there, who people tell me they think is a future Ballon d'Or winner. So, it's going to be really tough. And like to bring it back to where we started, let's just go through the English clubs who were in the Champions League this season. You had Arsenal with Raya, who you might not think is one of the elite goalkeepers, but he's a top goalkeeper. You've got obviously Alisson at Liverpool. You got Martinez, who was going into the season as one of the top goalkeepers. I just think you've got to have a top goalkeeper. And then you look around Europe. Look how fundamental Donnarumma was to PSG in that run through the knockout stages. Courtois in the past has been massive for Real Madrid in Champions League successes. And yet Barcelona probably went out because they had a clown in goal, Chesney, who should have retired about 3 years ago. And let in however many goals against Inter Milan. But that's true, isn't it? So, I mean, that's how important that position will be in those massive, massive games.
Well, lots to come. Obviously, you're going to get dialed in as Chelsea make it through the early parts of this transfer window that will not really stop despite the hard cutoff of June 10th. And yeah, we'll obviously be staying close over the summer. But for the end of the season, Matt, a hearty cheers to you for
Cheers.
an
Yeah.
excellent season of work again. Love
Thank
doing it.
you. I love doing these, and yeah, let's try and predict the entire season before the season starts next
See,
season.
that's what I'm saying. There we go. But look,
I
Chelsea
should
fans,
actually retire. I should retire from predictions if I had any sense. The thing is, I get too carried away, and I won't, and I'll fall down face first and look like an idiot. If I was sensible, I'd now never make another football prediction.
well, that's we got 1-800 bets off in the States for those prediction addicted folks. But look, from all of us here at the podcast, really appreciate your work over the season. We obviously will have lots more coming up in June, July, and August as we get back into it. We're only a couple months away from the season starting. It's crazy. I mean, it's like you
Comes
look,
around,
yeah,
yeah,
like the end of May to August is the shortest amount of time that has ever existed, especially
yeah.
this year. So
Well, especially this year, exactly, exactly.
lots happening, but you Chelsea fans, you know where to find us. We're going to be everywhere. CFC Central, scouting specials, updates throughout. But until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.